I myself personally have obtained over $200,000 of 0% APR credit, right, for my real estate project. I get a luxury vacation that was worth over $9,000 to Lake Como from one small Midwest property that was like $85,000. And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, wait a second, you could really use this specifically for real estate, because at the end of the day, this is money you have to spend already anyway. Why not use your expenses and turn it into an asset?
What we've run into sometimes with that is like some vendors will charge you the transaction fee if you use the credit card.
The only time I personally will pay a transaction fee on a credit card is when I'm earning a sign-up bonus. A lot of real estate investors don't know that. You could essentially use that credit card to furnish your rental. Use that 0% APR period for 12 months and your rental income will pay it back over time.
Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, a local real estate investor and agent based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Anna Milek, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor.
And today we have another special guest. I've been following Jaina on Instagram. Has some really cool content, and we wanted to bring her on to talk about this really cool topic about credit card hacking and using credit cards for traveling and things like that. But welcome to the show, Jaina. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nico. And thank you, Anna, for having me.
Yeah. So I'd love to give a space for you to, introduce yourself to those who don't know you and how you got into, real estate and how you got into doing what you're doing now with the credit cards.
Sure thing. So my name is Jaina Polasigi. I'm a real estate investor and travel hacker. And I also do all of that while working a full-time W-2. I'm based in Orange County, California. And how I got into real estate, I'm an out-of-state investor as well, essentially was during COVID. So like everyone else, the pandemic essentially changed everyone's lives. And one of my friends came up to me and he said, Jaina, I just bought a house. And I said, how? Because we're in Orange County, how did you buy a house? He's like, no, I bought it in Indiana. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, guess how much it was? And I said, I don't know. With my California brain of like $250K, he's like, $38,000. And I said, for a house, like a whole house? And he said, yes. So that was essentially the catalyst that got me to copy and paste his strategy, his boots on the grounds team. And now I have a 10-door portfolio in Evansville, Indiana, all long-term rentals. Then I'm also a limited partner for a boutique luxury hotel called Terra Palm Springs, which, by the way, you can now hack with Hyatt points. So what a dream to be a real estate investor and travel hacker and have a hotel that you could hack with points. It's so wild. It's so wild. And then lastly, I'm the chief operations officer for Oasis Housing Company. And what we do is we provide temporary housing for corporate and also insurance claims nationwide. So that's a little bit about me on the real estate end.
And that's all with a W-2?
Yes, that's with a full-time W-2.
Okay.
Now, does that W-2 tie into real estate at all, or is it completely separate?
So my background is in public health. I manage a county-wide quit smoking program. So we've helped over 20,000 people quit smoking since I've been at the department.
Love it. So you talked about the pandemic, and a lot of people, including us, we got into real estate kind of around that time as agents. But I know a lot of people also got into it around that time. What did you know about real estate? I know you mentioned you had a friend that did it in out of state, but did you know anything about real estate at all?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, essentially kind of started out me just wanting to increase my financial literacy during that time, because we saw the huge crash of the stock market. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I need to do something. I need to figure this out to take advantage. This is one of those times in your life where you're like, I need to figure this out and take advantage of this so I could set myself up in the future. So I started dabbling with stocks. I even went into cryptocurrency, was mining Ethereum when it was proof of work during that time. And then that's when I landed into real estate just by having conversations with different people. So I had no experience at all, but I did know it was one of the asset classes where essentially people become millionaires from it.
Okay, so then you went from being in California full-time W-2 in the public health sector. Friend mentions this. How did you then make that step to buying a house in a market that you weren't involved in, aside from your friend saying, I did it? And I mean, that's a big leap.
Absolutely. So it's a combination of trust with the person that you know who's an investor, but also the W-2 is a huge safety net that allowed me to take more risk because, if I buy a house here, it's over if I can't pay my rent. But if I buy a $50 single family home, my mortgage is $250. It's not the end of the world if I don't have a tenant. So I basically copied and pasted all his boots on the ground team, and they were just so excellent with communication. My realtor is from Oceanside, California. So he knew what it was like for, California investors to invest in that particular market. And for me, because I built such great relationships with my lender there as well, they allowed me to do really unique loans. For example, my first two loans were standard conventional 30-year fixed rate, but every door after that is a subject to appraisal commercial loan, which allows me to wrap the renovation costs into the property so that that becomes the mortgage. They give me a check for the renovation and I put no money down. So that's how I was able to scale without using my own money because I built relationships in such a small market that have these really niche lending products.
Wow, I've never heard of that product before. I need to know more about this.
Some people call it like a construction loan. I guess it depends on the bank what it's called, but it's really not publicized because it's usually for certain clients that they trust, right? Because you're essentially lending them all the money up front with very low risk, hoping that lender will not default, essentially.
So going out of state, and you mentioned, building your team, there's a lot of trust. What specifically attracted you to that market in Indiana? Was it cash flow and things like that?
It was a much lower price point, right? When I started learning that you could buy whole homes that are less than the price of a car driving around in my neighborhood, I was like, hey, this is possible for me to just use my own capital to be able to scale to a certain extent. Obviously, you reach that ceiling, but it was the lower price point, lower risk. In case something bad happens, I'm okay still paying for the mortgages, and just a trusted person that I knew that was investing there.
So it also sounds like you dabble in short-term and mid-term, and I'm sure we'll go into that, but are these properties all long-term, the ones that you have over there in Indiana?
Correct. The ones that I own are all long-term. And then I had a co-hosting company with another business partner where we did co-hosting for short-term and mid-term rentals. But since I've kind of transitioned into a different company where we just do temporary housing, which is essentially mid-term rental property management anyway. So I dabbled in all of it.
Yeah. And did you kind of just learn as you went? People get overwhelmed when they get into real estate,
Sure.
right? And they hear all these STR, MTR, long-term rentals. Did you know all this from experience, or were you just kind of going, learning as you go?
So another big benefit of having a W-2 is being able to have the capital to invest in yourself. So my business partner, I invested in over $20,000 of coaching. And that's where we learned how to do Airbnb arbitrage, how to do Airbnb coasting. So it essentially fast-tracked us to be able to save our time. You're essentially buying someone's expertise and their whole infrastructure to be able to start making money as soon as possible. Because for us, having a full-time W-2, time is money. We don't have enough time to learn from scratch, learn from our mistakes. We rather pay someone else and be like, teach me how to do it. So that way we're able to be standout operators from the beginning.
Yes. So with being long distance and W-2 and every other thing you're doing, do you manage these properties yourself, or do you have a property manager that's the boots on the ground there?
So initially we started managing it on our own, and wow, what a headache. Right away. Like we're in our W-2, like in meetings, but trying to text about fixing a toilet on the side. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, talk to my business partner. Like, this is overwhelming. And that's when we realized, we need to get some virtual assistants. And me and my business partner, we're Filipino. So fortunately, we know how to leverage Filipino VAs for very low rates hourly. And we know what motivates them. We know how to train them because culturally we know how to connect so that we can have that retention instead of them trying to look for, different places, as usually sometimes VAs do. But as soon as we could, we hired a VA, and that was the game changer for us for property management because she essentially took over 95% of the operations. And we really only had to do the decision making, specifically when something was like financial related. It did take a lot of upfront work training that VA, and it really does, take several years, honestly, because you're constantly refining your processes. But if you're committed to really training that VA, it will really be a huge benefit with your time that you could take back.
So you mentioned you're a co-partner or something with boutique hotel. Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm a limited partner, so it's essentially an equity partner. It's all passive. You get,
Okay.
distributions. I think for us, it's quarterly, but you're not involved in any of the operations or decision making. And the way that I was able to get into Terra Palm Springs is because I'm a community manager for a real estate community called Hello Rentals, which was originally started by Soli on Instagram. She's lattes and leases. And because I obviously worked with her, she, even though I'm not, what do you call that, an accredited investor, she allowed me to invest as a limited partner in that particular boutique hotel because I had that personal connection with her. And so that has been so amazing to be an investor of a hotel and stay, especially again, as someone who travel hacks and you're used to staying in these hotels, you have this experience that you could bring and be like, oh, this is what I like about this hotel. This is something that we could possibly integrate to make the guest experience even better. So that's all passive.
Oh, I love that. So is that essentially a syndication is what some people
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And that's appealing for people like yourselves who don't, you have a W-2 and things like that, but you love the idea of owning and being in the ownership group of a boutique hotel, but you don't want to be actively, doing all of it. So that's cool. I did want to touch, one of the main reasons why we brought you on, and I know we talked a little off camera, is you have some great content of how you're using credit cards to help, travel. And it's something, Anna and I love traveling. And it's something that I want to learn more about. So how did you even come about, learning about that and tying it in with the real estate?
Absolutely. So personally, I've always loved traveling. But again, around that same time, during COVID, me and my business partner invested in another coaching program where we wanted to figure out how to leverage 0% APR business capital to start our Airbnb arbitrage business. Because we're like, let's do this, but we don't want to use our own money. So let's figure out how to use other people's money. But what was really cool about this coaching program is it also taught you how to leverage your business expenses for nearly free travel through points and miles. So it was so perfect for us because learning that information is incredibly valuable to any business owner. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, you could really use it specifically for real estate because naturally as an investor, you accrue a lot of expenses, not only consistently, but big chunks when you're doing a renovation, when your roof gets messed up or when you're furnishing a new property. There's so much opportunity to earn tons and tons and points and miles. And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, wait a second. Instead of just paying my contractors with a check, let me just use credit cards as a pass-through to collect all of these huge sign-up bonuses and just these points in general. And so now every time I get a property, I get a free luxury vacation too, just because I have that particular skill set of using points and miles and knowing how to redeem them.
I'm so excited about this. My husband is the travel hacker in our family.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I don't even know where to start. I have so many questions, but I don't know. Nico, do you have one? Because I was about to get into the because what we've run into sometimes with that is some vendors will charge you the transaction fee if you use the credit card. So how do you navigate whether it's worth using it to get points or paying the transaction fee? Because there is sometimes the transaction fees sometimes are a little steeper than the points you can get, or at least that's what we've come across. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. While I do a little bit of math real quick, here we go. So the only time I was using my calculator real quick. So the only time I personally will pay a transaction fee on a credit card is when I'm earning a sign-up bonus, because the points that you earn from a sign-up bonus will far outweigh the 3% usually transaction fee, right? Yep. So let me give you an example. The Chase Inc. Unlimited right now has an elevated sign-up bonus, I believe, of 90,000 points. It's usually 70,000 points. And this is the same card I got for my third rental property when I was renovating it. So the minimum spend is $6,000 in 3 months. So what I do is, say your renovation costs are $15K. I'm just trying to give an example. Just put the minimum spend so you get that sign-up bonus. So that $6,000 will accrue $180 transaction fee at 3%. But those 90,000 points that you get from Chase can get you anywhere from 2 to 5 nights at an all-inclusive resort, in Mexico, right? So that trip far outweighs the $180 because that trip will be thousands of dollars. And that's when it will be worth it. It won't be worth it if you're just using it beyond that minimum spend. But this is what I do instead. Keep that Chase card open, because if you have other expenses, like as realtors, going to meetups, paying for business meals, or if you're driving for dollars, use it for your other expenses that don't accrue a transaction fee. It's only really when you're getting that sign up bonus is the fee worth it.
Yeah. Speaking of sign up bonuses, so you mentioned 90,000. That's a big sign up bonus. And what is what do you think of people that are just opening credit cards just for that sign up bonus? I know you mentioned to keep the other ones open, obviously, so you're not damaging your credit, but to continue doing that, is that something you recommend, to just keep opening credit cards?
No. So I think people fall into two categories, and let's just talk about real estate investors, right? So real estate investors either want simplicity because they're so busy, but then I would say there's less real estate investors like me who is a maximizer. You want as much luxury travel from your points and miles. So it really depends on what your travel goals are. If you're someone who just wants to take your family on a free trip to Hawaii every year, just get a couple cards and have that setup be in a machine to generate points and miles for you so you can take that family vacation every year. Or if you like me, I do maybe 3 international trips a year and a few domestic ones. That's when I would open and close the card strategically, though. So I didn't mention this, but I was also a business funding advisor for Freedom Funders for a few years. That's Colin Matthew. So after I took that first coaching program about leveraging 0% APR, I became obsessed. And I was like, I need to learn more of this, because this is truly a creative financing strategy that people just don't know about. And that's when I learned all about business lines of credit, 0% APR, business credit card stacking. And I myself personally have obtained over $200,000 of 0% APR credit, right, for my real estate project. So it's knowing bank rules. So would I suggest it to anyone? No, right? But that's also why I know you guys say like, oh, where do we start? I'm actually creating a Travel Hacker Accelerator course specifically for real estate investors that I'm launching next month. And that's because so many people approach me like, Jaina, do you have a course? And I'm like, no, and they're like, okay, when are you going to make one? So I'm finally doing it for all of these reasons, because I talk on these podcasts a lot and people are like, I just want one place where I could go so I could learn how to do this at the optimal level. And that's what I'm creating. So we could talk more about that later as well. But essentially, no, that's my long-winded answer for no, it's not what I suggest unless you truly know all the information, which is very complex.
Yeah, no, you mentioned it's complex, it's kind of hard, and they don't make it easy to really understand all these, what are points versus dollars, like where do you go, what's the best credit card. So that's cool that you're making a course to kind of keep it all in house. But speaking specifically about points, right? So you can book trips, hotels, all-inclusive resorts off of points, right? So speaking specifically to that, how do you accumulate, like, how do you decide what points make sense versus like actually dollars, and what, how does it break even kind of thing?
Excellent question. So let's start from the basics. One of the first things that people need to understand, and one of the biggest mistakes real estate investors believe, is that all points and miles are created equal. That is absolutely false. You want to think of it as currency. So here's an example. I like to give an example so people can understand. My friend came up to me. He was like, Jaina, this Hilton card has 100,000 point bonus. Shouldn't I get it over the Chase 60,000 point bonus? Right? So superficially, you just look at the numbers. Obviously, 100 is bigger than 60. So I said to him, I was like, Ralph, listen, let me pose this in a different way. If you ask me, hey, Jaina, I said, hey, Ralph, would you want 100,000 Hilton pesos or 60,000 Chase dollars? What would you choose? He was like, dollars. Of course, because they're more valuable. So anytime that you have a flexible currency, those are the ones specifically with banks like Chase, Amex, Citi, Wells Fargo, Bilt that can transfer to different airline and hotel partners. Those are always going to be more valuable than just an airline mile or a hotel point. If you look up like the value of points on the Points Guy, that is an easy resource anyone can look. It will show you the actual values of each point. And that's why we call Delta miles like Delta pesos, because they're so low value. And that's why you see a lot of travel hackers love love Amex. Oh my God, I can't even get this right. Love Hyatt. Like myself, there's too many, right? Love Hyatt because Hyatt points are way more valuable. For example, I have this reel on my Instagram that shows if you compared, hotels across the different hotel brands that are $200 a night in Los Angeles, it will cost anywhere from 40 to 50,000 points per night from Hilton or Marriott or IHG. But if you use Hyatt points for a Hyatt hotel, it's only 15,000 points. They're just more valuable. So that's the one major thing to understand is just think about it like normal currency. They have different values.
Yeah. And then, what I've learned, or I say I and my husband is, there's promos sometimes too. We like Chase. Chase seems to be the number one, but like you can transfer them to other airlines and sometimes they give you like twice the value or 75% or some, like you have to be looking for that. But there's opportunities like that too, right? Where like these promotions pop up to like double your points.
Exactly. So one of the tools that I like using for that is called Upgraded Points Transfer Partner Tool. If you just Google that, it will show you all the active bonuses. So for example, Citi has a lot of new transfer bonuses to hotels and airlines. And one right now with Chase is Flying Blue. Flying Blue is the loyalty program of Air France and KLM. And I just helped a former NFL player, he's also a real estate investor, book round trip flights to Paris using Flying Blue, with Chase as a transfer partner. But we just missed the transfer bonus. If that transfer bonus came during the time that we booked, he would have saved even more points. So absolutely, you look at that tool every time that you're going to transfer points to see if you could take advantage of any additional savings.
What's the name of that tool again, Jaina?
If you just Google Upgraded Points Transfer Partner Tool, it will come up.
Okay.
I'm signing up for your course. I'm saying that now because I have so many more.
Because like what people don't realize, it's like it has an infinite return. I teach you how to do something. You invest in the course one time, and just like me, tens of thousands of dollars later, I'm still redeeming this travel just because I'm a real estate investor.
Yeah.
I try to help people understand. It's like you have an infinite ROI. You tell that to someone, they're like, "Oh, I get it. All right, got it."
Now, random question that I just thought of. All of us love traveling, right? And it's one of the reasons why we like this credit card stacking. But would it make sense for people that aren't really big travelers to do things like this for their real estate business?
It depends, right? Because I do have people say like, Jaina, I don't like traveling. So my next question to them is, if they do have a real estate business, I say, do you have staff that like to travel? Right? Because I attended a mastermind for 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs. And one of them said, I don't really like traveling. And I was like, how many people do you have on your team? He's like, we have over 50. So I was like, this is what you do. Imagine you create a bonus and you tell your team, whoever gets the highest quota, whatever product you're selling, I will send you and a partner on an all expenses paid trip to Cancun, flights, hotels, meals, everything included. Now you've created something that not only boosts morale for your company, it also boosts sales because now people have an additional reason for them to work even harder. And now you've given someone at your company an amazing luxury trip that doesn't affect your bottom line because points are not taxed. So that's not even coming out of an expense. You're keeping more of your cash flow and your business revenue, but you're still giving this luxury, tangible, cost-heavy kind of reward to your team. So I say, even if you don't like it, hey, if you can use it as a motivator for your staff, or if you have friends and family, I've gifted hotel stays for honeymoons for friends. Right. So you're saving money there because at the end of the day, this is money you have to spend already anyway. You're spending it already. Why not use your expenses and turn it into an asset? That's what you have to help real estate investors. Like, your expenses become an asset if you know how to transform them into points and miles, because now they have a monetary value that you could use for different reasons, not just yourself.
I love that. That's such a great tip. If you're not a traveler yourself, you can use it to build your incentives for your team to grow revenue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to mention one more thing. Like the company I work with that does temporary housing, we're hoping to do a trip to the Philippines on points, right? So so that we could actually meet our VAs in person, right? That's huge. That's huge to be able to meet our virtual assistants in person and give them a nice experience they never thought that they could have, right? So many reasons points and miles could be incredibly valuable. It's not just for travel. It's to create memories, to create opportunities.
Yeah. So when opening up these credit cards, all these questions are based on experience. Like, how do you get around, like, my husband still has a W-2, so that's how we've been able to open up a lot of these cards. Like, but eventually you kind of hit a ceiling where they're like, okay, you have all these credit cards that are open. Why aren't you using this one? Like, that happened to us. Like, they literally Chase was like, you have these. Why don't you use one of the ones you already have? Like, how do you get around that? Is there a simplified answer?
Absolutely. So that happened to me too. So Chase has a maximum exposure of $150,000 in credit line across your business and personal credit cards. Unless you have a certain threshold of income, that's usually in the millions, then that's going to be higher. But for most people, it's 150K. So once all your credit cards kind of gets around that cap, then they start giving you 2K credit limits every time you open a card. So the way that you get around that is you go to a different bank. Start going to Amex, start getting their credit cards. Once you've done that, go to Citi, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a cap. But I do love Chase because there's different ways that you can continuously essentially get the sign up bonuses again. But also there's such valuable points that you want to keep those open, not only to have a thick credit profile with Chase and that very strong relationship, but a lot of their cards are really good when it comes to the offers and their perks. You can still use their cards for your regular spend to earn tons of points and miles. And this is another thing. We're real estate investors, so it's a lot of relationship based activity. Once you show other people what you're doing, what you're able to get, just use your referral links. And that's how you could accumulate tens of thousands of points and miles that could take you around the world just because you know how to network, right? So that's another reason to keep them open. But in the short answer, it's essentially you start moving to different banks.
Okay. And that's right. What you just mentioned is it's reciprocal, right? So if you refer somebody and they get to hit their bonus, you as the referee also get points, correct?
For certain cards. So usually Chase and Amex will do it, but say like Barclays, you don't necessarily get referral points, but Chase and Amex are the really good ones where you get tons of referral points.
Okay. And talking specifically to like the real estate investors, I know, a lot of fix and flippers, for example, have a lot of expenses. They're buying materials, they're going to Home Depot and things like that. But you also mentioned that you're, a short-term and mid-term operator. So I'm just curious, what are some general expenses that people can think of and use these business credit cards for?
Excellent question. So let's start with realtors because that's what you guys are, right? Yeah. So I would say the best credit card for realtors is the Amex Business Gold because it gets you 4X on gas, 4X on dining. So if you're, showing your listings, if you're having business meals, you're getting 4X on that. Also, I'm not a CPA, but talk to your CPA because it's a business credit card. You could possibly deduct the annual fee. Talk to your CPA. Yeah. Another thing is for example, sometimes realtors do this where they have ads. The Amex Business Gold gets 4X on ads. It essentially gives you 4X on your top 2 categories of spend each month, right? So that would be a great card. If you were an Airbnb operator, midterm rental operator, one of the best cards I think is the Chase Business Inc. Unlimited, right? Because you could essentially use that credit card to furnish your rental, use that 0% APR period for 12 months, and your rental income will pay it back over time. Now you're able to design your rental in a more competitive way beyond the capital that you had originally. You're like, oh, I don't have enough money. But now that you have this capital of 0%, let's get that hot tub. Let's get that fire pit. Let's make my rental more competitive so I can demand higher nightly rates. And it allows me to pay off that furnishing over time. Not only that, there's so much software that's involved, especially if you operate from a different state, whether it's having your tech, like your Ring camera, your Schlage lock, your Google Nest, right? And then all the associated software. You put that on your Inc. Unlimited that earns 1.5 points per dollar in all your subscriptions. You're generating points like a machine just by your regular operating expenses. You're not buying anything extra. It's your normal expenses. Then I would say for someone who's a flipper, what people don't realize is with American Express, there's a difference between a credit card and a charge card. So a credit card has a credit limit. It will actually say $50,000 credit limit. Say, for example, the Amex Blue Business Plus. That is a credit card because it has a credit limit. It also is a great credit card for real estate investors. So 0% APR, no annual fee for 12 months. I know all the credit cards. But flippers would want to use the charge cards. And the reason why is because they have something called spending power. So the charge card is the Amex Green, Gold, and Platinum, right? So instead of a credit limit, they have spending power, which allows you to get higher. It's not a credit limit, but spending power, and it's dynamic. So it changes depending on your expenses and your costs. when I first got the Amex Business Gold, it had a 0% APR for 6 months. It's not all the time, FYI. So these offers change. So this would be great for a flipper who needed that, capital in the beginning. And me, as a very small investor, which is like rentals in the Midwest, they gave me spending power of 200,000.
Wow.
Right. But the thing is with the charge cards, they're not going to give you all that spending power that has a 0%. There's always going to be a cap, but that just goes to show that you typically want something with like higher spending power, like a charge card if you're a flipper, because obviously your costs are greater. So that just goes to say that there are different cards for every kind of real estate investor. So it's you kind of need to do a real estate, I call it a card audit, because we identify like what kind of expenses you have normally, and then we match that to certain cards that earns you the most points for those types of expenses. So it really depends on the real estate investor, which kind of card is best for them.
Yeah, I'm so glad I asked that question, because all I knew, I mean, I have a Chase credit card Inc. One, and that's the one that I believe Jaina has that as well. And it's been great, but I didn't know that there's other cards specifically that you would recommend for realtors and fix and flippers and things like that.
Yeah, no one knows that because no one does travel hacking and real estate investing. Like I'm the only, at least, creator that does it. That's why nobody knows. And it's nice because I have that experience in different niches. I've gotten so many credit cards that I was able to figure out, oh, this is best for this and this is best for this. But there's one huge thing that people need to understand first is you don't go out and just get the best credit card. You have to have bank relationships first. If you try to go get that Amex Blue Business Plus and you've only ever banked with Chase, they'll probably hit you with what we call a 2K slap. They'll give you a 2K credit limit and you're like, what can I do with this? Nothing, because you did try to build a relationship. Remember, banks don't want to lend money to people they don't know. Just because they have money, they don't know you. That's why you need to build that relationship. You need to date your bank, especially for banks like Chase, who I think is like a jealous boyfriend. They don't like you banking with other banks. You need to build that relationship first. Like, let me get this personal credit card. Mm-hmm. Let me get a checking account so they could see your spending habits and they could build trust with you. Then later on, you could be like, okay, can I get that ring in marriage and get that higher business line of credit? They're more likely to give it to you because now they know you. It's called KYC, know your customer. So be careful when people are saying, get this credit card, because you might even get denied because you don't have a relationship with that bank.
It's like, how do I get a relationship with Amex? Because they don't have, at least around here, we don't have Amex. There's no banks.
You get a personal card. You build a personal card specifically with a credit limit. Do not get a charge card. So that way it would have 0 annual fee and it will be your forever card so you don't have to close it. And this is going to be part again of the program. There's a lot of funding hacks you could do with American Express, right, to leverage that capital for real estate expenses. So you absolutely want to get into their ecosystem because they are the most generous with new investors, especially those that don't have an LLC. You can still get a business credit card doing sole proprietor and using your social security number as an EIN. A lot of real estate investors don't know that because they don't have an LLC. Maybe they just bought it under their name, their first property, and they're like, I don't have a business. I was like, you could still get a business credit card. Real estate is a business, right? As long as you have the intention of generating money, that's a business.
Yeah. I will say for the investors that are also active duty military with Amex, they can get the Amex Platinum wave. They can get their fees waived.
I know some people in the military that go ham on that Amex Platinum. They just get like the business version, they get the personal version, they get like, the other versions of it. So I'm like, you might as well. You're in the military and that's a great benefit. My dad was in the Navy, so I totally understand. Those are great perks for them. Yeah.
Speaking specifically about that, building that relationship, how long do you think you'd have to like have a personal relationship with a bank before you actually reach out to get those bigger credit limits?
Excellent question. So there's different ways around this. Say, for example, you banked with Wells Fargo and you're like, wow, Chase has these really good cards. I've never banked with them. So there's 2 things that you could do. You could go in branch, and I always recommend going in branch, right, to open up that business checking with them so you could actually talk to a human. Right. And they could vouch for you. What people don't realize is banks want to work with you. That's their business, right? They actually want to work with you. So if you go in there, talk to a human, help them understand your business, even if it's new, they work directly with the underwriter. So when you open that business checking account, they can actually on the spot, even though that's your first interaction with Chase, be like, oh, do you want a business credit card? So if you're trying to fast track the best ways to open a business checking account, deposit at least $2,000 because that's a minimum amount, in order to avoid fees with their business checking accounts, then ask if you can apply for the business credit card with them, like on the spot. Because what that banker will do is they'll call directly the underwriters and, ask you the questions, that they need for clarification so that you can get that business credit card. What happens is there's a lot of places where people make mistakes on the online application for business funding. There's a lot of places. So what happens is they fill it out incorrectly. And what people don't realize are there are these NAICS codes, these industries that identify what kind of business you are. And do you know what is one of the risky business industries?
Real estate, I'm sure.
Real estate. So people are putting real estate and they're like, why did I get denied? Why did I get a $1,000 credit limit? Because there's certain things that you need to do. And what happens is when you're applying online, an algorithm is denying you. A computer is. That's why you want to go in branch so you could talk to a human and they could actually vouch for your situation. That's always going to be better for business owners.
Yep. Clearly, I'm tied to the military because I will say Chase also offers waived fees if you have military affiliation for veterans. So that $2,000 limit, I still recommend depositing an amount to show your goodwill, but you should look at the bank because there are sometimes ways to waive those fees, especially for our military folks. Clearly,
absolutely. Navy brat right here. So I get it.
Yeah.
So I know we touched on this a little earlier, or maybe off camera, but Anna and Brian both are real estate investors, and they started up their credit cards with that startup bonus, and they kind of go back and forth, right? And do you recommend that? Like if you have a partner that's also maybe they don't even need to be a part of real estate, but they're helping out to get those startup points. Is that something that you would recommend?
Absolutely. I love your question, Nico. You're hitting on all the biggest mistakes real estate investors make. So one of the biggest mistakes is you're putting your spouse as an authorized user on your credit card. And that's not a mistake in general, right? Logically, just for your family operations. But if you're trying to do points and miles, what you want to do is called a player two strategy. So that's if you have a spouse or even a travel buddy. And I've done this with a business partner too, where you want to give your referral link. So instead of, say, for example, let's use the Chase Sapphire Preferred, one of the best travel cards for beginners, right? So say you get that card and your spouse is an authorized user. Instead of doing that, what you want to do is remove your spouse as an authorized user, give your referral link for the preferred card to your spouse. Now you get 10,000 points referral bonus, and that spouse will now get the elevated sign-up bonus once they meet minimum spend. So let's just say like the normal baseline preferred, it's usually $60K sign-up bonus. So say player one is you, the investor, right? You get the sign-up bonus. After 3 months, you get $60K. And during that time, you could give, whenever you feel ready, your referral link to your spouse. They get the bonus. So now instead of just getting 60,000 points as a couple, now you have 130,000 points minimum as a couple because you're using these player two strategies, right? So that's absolutely something that you want to do. And that could supercharge your points and miles to take families on vacation and not just like a couple or one person.
And that can just be specific for one card. You mentioned this.
That's literally just one card.
Yeah, so if you decided to go the other cards, you can essentially do it, rinse and repeat.
Yeah,
right?
It depends. As long as the card has a referral bonus, not that you can't do it. If it doesn't have a referral bonus, I actually am helping my friends with the honeymoon right now. And I suggested they both get the City Strata Premier, even though it doesn't have a referral bonus, still together, getting that card each, they're going to get round trip flights on economy to Japan for free, right? For nearly free. There's taxes and fees, of course. But one of the questions people ask is like, well, Jaina, I don't want to pay 2 annual fees, right? If me and my partner get the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Well, this is the thing. There's an exit strategy. One of you could pick whoever it is, can downgrade the card to a no annual fee card. So that could be the Freedom Flex or the Freedom Unlimited. That way you keep the points, you keep your on-time payment history, right? But now you're not paying the annual fee, right? So many ways and so many hacks. That's why you guys got to join my course. Like all of it's together, all of it's in one place. And you're like, whoa, here it is laid out for a real estate investor.
Now we have to plug. When you said next month, is this when this course is?
So
what does it look like?
Yeah, I have a free webinar September 29th. So that's Monday next week. I don't know when this is going to air, but that's essentially to show the basics of travel hacking as a real estate investor specifically. And then my 5-week, program is going to launch in October. And part of the 5-week program is there's a 6-week for VIPs where it's going to be a business funding masterclass where I will teach you how do you obtain $50,000 at least in 0% APR business funding for your real estate project? So I can't give that bonus again ever because it's just high value. I'm just doing it like for this first pilot course. But tons and tons of value that will pay you back over and over and over again once you learn how to do all these strategies. And you guys already even seeing in the examples, right? Just learning these small tweaks. They're very simple, right? But you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so when I see that even like previous like NFL players and millionaires are coming to me and be like, how do I leverage? Because the mindset of a real estate investor is like, how does my money make more money? Right. And that's what this does, just in a different way. It just takes a little bit of education. That's why I offer it first for real estate investors who want to learn it on their own. And then I offer a second tier where I teach real estate investors, virtual assistants, or their administrative assistants how to do it because they're the ones booking the flights for them.
Ooh, I love that. So would you consider this webinar for beginners or in this area? Or would you also say it's good for folks that have done it, but maybe don't know all the stuff that you do?
Yeah, it's any level. It's any level, but we do start it from scratch so you could get that foundation because there's always stuff that people are missing at the foundation. And what's really cool is it's mirrored as the cycle of a real estate transaction. So it's like building your foundation, doing your deal analysis, due diligence, closing the luxury trip. You know, I made it like real estate themed, obviously. I love it. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hop on. And we are running close on time. So I'm just curious now we talk a lot about traveling and we always like to ask this question. What is your top 2 places that you've traveled so far?
Oh, great question. So it will always have to be Emirates business class to Lake Como because that was my first business class redemption that I got from my renovation of my 3rd property. And it was just such a special experience because I remember growing up, you know, I come from a working class family. Just my dad was in the Navy. That's it. And, you know, walking past that first class, you just feel like a peasant. You're like, oh, they're looking at me, you know? But I remember telling myself, I'll get here one day. I'll get here one day. And that's what happened through points and miles. Like my actual like W-2 income still can't actually afford to get those business class trips regularly. But because I know how to use points and miles, that empowers me to be able to take those regularly now. So when I did Lake Como, flying through Emirates business class, and we stayed at a 5-star luxury hotel called Hotel Grand Victoria. That's definitely one of my favorites. So that was when I used the subject to appraiser loan, right? And what happened was my lender gave me a check for $26,000 and said, oh, use this to pay your contractors. And I said, oh, you're just going to give me a check? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to do something. I opened up the credit cards, put all the contractor invoices through the credit cards, even with the fee. It was fine for me, paid back the credit cards with that $26,000 check. And now I get a luxury vacation that was worth over $9,000 to Lake Como from one small Midwest property that was like $85,000. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's the power of it, right? It's, you know, you just making a little mini tweak and expenses that you're going to be doing anyway. You're just putting it on the credit card so you can maximize all the points, which is awesome. Yeah. Now that, you know, you've done quite a bit since the pandemic and learning about real estate, what is some advice you'd give, you know, you 5 years ago when you started? What is some advice that you would give yourself and from what you know now?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I feel like it would be to constantly be talking to new people, because all of the opportunities that I've been able to get since the pandemic was because of the relationships that I built. Like, for example, I mentioned, you know, I was a community manager with Soli, right? That was only because I took her private money lending course, right? And then Soli opened doors for me to meet other real estate investors who are playing it even bigger than me. Like, I'm very, very modest, you know, real estate investor. If you're really looking at the actual numbers, it's less than $1 million portfolio, but I am constantly exposed to millionaires. And they always say, I know it's very, you know, common to say, but your network is your net worth. And I can see differently how they think. And I wouldn't have ever had that kind of frame of mind just staying in my W-2, continuously doing what I had done these past 12 years in my W-2. Right. So I would say Meet as many people as you can and genuinely be interested. Be a good listener. Don't just talk about what you do. Hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it shows because you've been in all these communities, all these different, masterminds and courses that you took. You really wanted to train and learn and then be with people that are doing what you want to be doing, right? I think Anna and I talk about that all the time is, being in a community, keeping the conversation going, because not everybody thinks like real estate investors, right, Jaina? You gotta kind of go out of your way to selfishly have these conversations.
Of course. And it's different for me because, I work in a hospital and that's like one of the epitomes of just grind culture, right? Doing the same thing every day. And, for the nurses, they're making a decent salary too. But, it's just a different frame of thinking.
Yeah, most people think we're crazy.
Yeah, they're like, why would you do that when you could have the comfort of working, like this? And I was like, I don't know. Why are you asking me about my all-inclusive Big Sur trip that I'm able to take during the weekday?
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, Dana, this has been a lot of fun. And where can people reach out to you? And we'll make sure to plug your course and your webinar that's coming up. But where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. So my handle's right there, Jaina _Anne, JAINA_ANNE.
Perfect.
Follow.
Perfect. And one more time about that webinar. When is that? And
Absolutely. So join my free webinar on September 29th, 5 p.m. Pacific time. It's travel hacking for real estate investors. And we'll talk about, because you're a real estate investor, literally a fringe benefit of doing so is luxury travel for pennies on the dollar.
Yes. And then when is your mastermind course coming out? You said October?
Yeah, it's going to launch second week of October 13th. So tons of stuff going on.
Yeah, I can't wait. We'll definitely be on the lookout for sure. But that is going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. Please like, share, subscribe. If you found any value, reach out to Anna or me. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official on all social platforms. And you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna Bialik _realtor on Instagram and Anna Bialik everywhere else. And I'm stealing Jaina's trick for next time to put it like in the bottom because I'm like,
yeah, we need to do that. There we go. All right, guys. Thank you, Jaina.
Thank you so much.
bye.